Do we think adults talk about weapon carrying with young people, like in day-to-day conversation? Do we think these are positive interactions?
I think it's very negative. Like, I know for a fact in my family group chat, every other message is somebody sending something being like, oh, somebody just got stabbed down the road, something happened. And I think it adds to the fear. I think it's similar to social media. It just reinforces it. People speak about it in a way which just, I don't think it actually represents the reality.
So do we think they talk about other people carrying weapons rather than like having a sit down conversation about, oh, you shouldn't carry a knife, or like...
I think it's really disconnected. I think every parent thinks it will never be my child that happens to. So I think it's really difficult because people aren't speaking about it as if it's a reality. It's this distant thing that everybody's scared of, not something that we should be having serious conversations about.
And I think anytime there is a conversation about it, it often seems quite rehearsed. Often like, you know, in schools or in spaces of where adults are kind of like, not forced to say it, but it quite seems quite like disingenuous and quite far and detached from the actual situation. It's kind of like, don't carry knives, you know, maybe a police officer was coming in and talk, but it's never really like, you're not really understanding the implications of carrying a knife. I don't think it's delivered in a way where a young person can actually truly understand what is being shared with them.
And I definitely agree with what you said, because I do believe there's power in even testimony, having people who've been impacted by knife crime or who've been like, you know, acted like physically, where they actually come and tell a story to a young person to say, this was the reason why I carried the knife. And it's not just to tell you not to do it, but to relate to you, to understand, listen, I understand where you're at, but there's a reason why, you know, I'm not in this position anymore. I've had to go through X, Y, and Z. So exactly, yeah.
I think sometimes those conversations are so specific to young men. And I think we forget that young girls are involved in violence just as much, maybe sometimes in different ways. But I know I've heard conversations around adults where they're like, oh, I'm so glad I've got girls because I don't have to worry about that issue. You do, but you just think, oh, it's only a certain demographic of people that are involved in knife carrying or violence in general.
Yeah, I always thought the way that knife crime was spoken about is kind of in the way that drugs are spoken about. It's that thing that adults say, okay, you shouldn't do this, it's really bad. Yeah, obviously, but I don't think they realize how, if you're in a specific community or you're in that specific environment, I don't think they realize how easy it is to fall into that or how easy it is to see it. A lot of the time, every time I've been spoken about knife crime, all that has been said is don't follow in the footsteps of a certain family member or friend who's done the same thing, or just don't go out at night. And it's always like a lecture or berating. It's never like an open conversation, which is quite sad actually, because if I were to be in that environment, I don't know if I would feel safe to go to this adult and speak about it. I don't know if I would have that safe space to express genuine concerns about it.
I think there's not enough understanding around carrying a knife isn't something that's done just because you fancy carrying a knife. Life carrying is always linked to something else. So you're probably linked to, I don't know, maybe they're involved in generic violence, maybe they're involved in a gang, or maybe they're involved in selling drugs. Like, it's not just something you wake up one morning and decide to do. So maybe there needs to be a little bit more understanding from adults. Like, I'm not carrying a knife because I want to kill somebody. I'm carrying a knife because maybe I'm scared, or maybe I just feel uncomfortable.
Yeah, true. There's a lot of don't do this, but not enough of how can I feel safe in the situation that I'm in.
And I think, or maybe as a guy it might be different, but I think maybe especially for young boys, if you are caught carrying a knife, is it that you're then having a conversation around why, or is it I'll take that off you and we'll just pretend that never happened? Or I don't think there's enough conversation around what can we do to prevent this, because we know it happens, but they're just kind of othered in society, I think.
And I think where you've been a victim or know someone who's a victim of violence, to be told like not to carry it when you've experienced something so close to you and not really understanding beyond the point of like this harmed someone. And like if it can harm them, it can harm me. And I think having wider conversations and interventions would be important.
I agree. It's like a lot more, like we need a lot more education and awareness. But yeah, it's important to like get the young people when they're maybe a bit younger, like I don't know what age, but maybe like 10 or something like that, before they've actually gotten involved yet, so that they can understand like what the dangers are.
Obviously, the CVV says only 18% of young people were offered support after being a victim of knife crime. But we're all talking about the problem, but what are we actually doing to support that problem? If young people haven't got positive spaces to go to, and like knife crime and violence happening in the spaces they are going to, well, when are we going to stop talking about it and actually do something that's going to help them?
To find out more, download the Youth Endowment Fund's Children, Violence and Vulnerability Report.